Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Very warm welcome to our April edition of Ask Me Anything webinar, where our experts interact with you to answer your questions. Anything around MQTT, MQTT Sparkplug, or IoT architectures and around those topics. I am Jayshree Hegde, helping with moderating this session. So for today's Ask Me Anything session, we have our senior consultants from our professional services team, Matthias Hofschen and Anja Helmbrecht-Schaar. Joined by Matthias and Anja is Gaurav Suman, Director of Product Marketing, who will be moderating the Q&A. So before we kick off, I would like to share that we are recording the session and we will share the recording in a follow-up email. Please use the Q&A pod in the control panel to submit your questions. Please interact in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from. Let's make it very interactive. We are aware that some of you have already submitted the questions and you need not type them in again. In order to interact with you all, we will unmute your mic during the interaction. At the end, if there are any unanswered questions, we'll get back to you later. Also, we encourage you to reach out to our community forum. Lastly, we will be running two polls, one right at the beginning, just for us to understand if you are starting with MQTT, how is your journey with MQTT? And there's another poll we will be running at the end of the session. I request you to cast votes and participate so that it will help us in the future to make these sessions better for you. Now, without further ado, I will hand it over to Gaurav and I will launch the first poll.
Thank you, Jayshree. Everybody, so Jayshree is just going to put up a poll question for, actually two poll questions for all of you. Please take a moment to answer these questions and then we'll get started with the questions.
I'll run it for about a minute so that you all have time to participate. I'll end the poll. I'll share the results.
Excellent. Thank you, Jayshree. So we see a majority of the people who are here are consider themselves as beginners, so which is fantastic. That's why we have a session like the one we are doing today. This is a good place to ask questions on your mind around MQTT. And we also see that there are people who are considering or they plan to use MQTT for their deployment in the coming time. So again, fantastic place to be for all of you. I'm excited for all of you, and I'm excited because we have two experts in Anja and Matthias who will be able to answer some of the really good questions which have come in today. Greatly appreciate it. So welcome everybody. Welcome again. I'm going to dive into the questions right away here. And let's start with this question we have from Sujit Chaudhary. And Sujit is asking a question around HiveMQ support for on-premises. And they're looking to understand how HiveMQ compares with, say, free options like some open source broker options like, say, Mosquitto. And I would like to combine this with another thing which Sujit has raised in a different question, which is it possible to start with the MQTT broker, any open source MQTT broker, and start with them and then eventually switch over to a commercial broker like HiveMQ? So what should they be watching out for? What's the way to evaluate that kind of a strategy? So I think these two questions kind of come together. So over to our experts to hear their opinion on this.
Yeah, so welcome everyone from sunny Bavaria. Sujit, thanks for the question. Great question. Let's see. So you have free open source brokers such as HiveMQ CE. This is the community edition. And you're asking, can I start with that? And what are the advantages of then going to a professional edition for additional things that I'll explain? So yes, of course, you can start with the HiveMQ CE version. HiveMQ CE works great. Alternative, of course, would be Mosquitto, though, of course, you would understand that I would never use Mosquitto, always HiveMQ CE. That must be clear. If you wanted to move to professional version, what would be the differences? Well, the biggest difference is probably that you want to have a cluster of HiveMQ nodes that act as one MQTT broker. It's probably the most important part here. If you have a single machine, and that would be in the case of Mosquitto or HiveMQ CE, you have a single MQTT broker that runs on a single machine. That, of course, can fail. And if it does fail, then the connectivity is going to be interrupted until that is restarted. That's why once you go to production, you would want to deploy a broker cluster. Cluster is then made up of, let's say, 2, 3, 4, 5 machines. That depends on the load of your use case, of your scenarios. And then with that, you have 5, let's say 3 systems that back each other up. So if one goes down, then the remaining 2 will continue serving communication to your publishers and subscribers. What's important to keep in mind here, in MQTT, clients connect with a standing TCP connection. So of course, if you lose one node, then the connected clients will disconnect and will reconnect to one of the other available brokers. And to the client, it doesn't make any difference. If you have session awareness configured, it'll just resume. So that'll work really nicely. So in that sense, yes, you can start with the open source version and then switch over to professional version. So let's say you want to test things. Once you go to production, I would definitely recommend going to the professional version. And yeah, so in terms of Mosquitto versus HiveMQ CE, from me, that's only one answer. I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you, Matthias. Appreciate it. I can't see Sujit on the list of attendees. Otherwise, I would have requested them to unmute themselves and perhaps ask a follow-up if they need it, but I'm sure this is helpful for a lot of our current participants and people who will receive a recording of this webinar. The next question I want to pick up is around Azure. And what they're asking here is if it's possible to run HiveMQ on Azure cloud specifically, and what recommendations do you have around that?
Yeah, let me pick that up. So there's the most important part is to say that HiveMQ is deployment or environment agnostic, which means that you can install it pretty much anywhere you want to. And that, of course, includes any of the big cloud providers or also smaller cloud providers. That is also true for on-premise installations. Essentially, you can install HiveMQ anywhere that you wish to. If we look at Azure in specifics, there's probably 2 ways on doing that. You can install it on the Azure VM, the virtual machine offering from Azure. We have actually an ARM template available. So if you look at the blog posts on the HiveMQ website, there's a blog post that describes on how to do that. If you use the ARM template, you would get HiveMQ installed on VMs together with load balancers and everything else that you need to run HiveMQ on Azure. The second option would be you could use an installation on Kubernetes. So on Azure, that's called Azure Kubernetes Service, AKS. And you can use the HiveMQ Kubernetes operator to install HiveMQ on Kubernetes on Azure. And that's also a very good approach. Literally, once you get familiar with this, it'll be like a minute or 2, and you have a running cluster, HiveMQ cluster on Azure.
Sounds good. Sounds good, Matthias. Thank you for that. The next question I want to pick up is a question around sensors. And this question is how communication status of any sensors can be monitored.
Yeah.
Who wants to take this?
Yeah, I can
Sure.
try to answer this. Yeah, so that's a nice question. How can I monitor sensor data directly? Because normally you are monitoring with an MQTT broker the metrics of the of the clients and also the metrics of the broker itself. But it is from the application side maybe more interesting to have also monitoring available for the sensor data, and there are different ways, I would say. So one way is that if you are using HiveMQ in the professional edition, there we have a control center, and you can in the control center you have that's a web interface where you can directly look into what your clients are doing and what data they have sent in the last time. But this is, I think, this is not the way that so it's not good for automation and for dashboards and so on. But what we also did, so for Sparkplug we developed a Sparkplug extension that and this extension is has a kind of general approach that all data that will send over Sparkplug. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with Sparkplug, but you have with Sparkplug you have a fixed topic structure, and so that you know about the status of sensors, how you can get this from the topic structure and also from the messages that are sent inside the MQTT publishes. And with this extension, so HiveMQ can be extended by using our extension SDK, and this extension is doing a very quite simple thing. It's looking is this or checking, is this a Sparkplug message? Belongs this to the Sparkplug topic structure? And can I read the payload, for example? And this with this payload, it will be generating in a very easy way the metrics from the payload itself, and also the status information from the that is can be inherited from the burst and the DAS messages for all the devices, and also the devices that are connected via gateways. And within this Sparkplug extension, we have also an InfluxDB sender integrated. And so InfluxDB is also an open source time series database that can be used for free, especially if you start to try out. And we are pumping all the monitoring data into InfluxDB, and InfluxDB offers a UI that can be generated so that you can really build your own dashboard on your where you can, for example, look to each device, what was the last value, or what was how is it connected or not, and so on. So this is something that can be really individual set up.
Sounds good, Anja. Thank you. That was very helpful. And I see Sujit has now joined us. So Sujit, this question, what Anja was answering came from you. And in case you have a follow-up, we are happy to unmute you. So I'll request my colleague, Jayashree, to give you the opportunity to ask a follow-up if you would like.
Just give me a minute.
Sure.
I have unmuted you. You can start interacting.
Hey, hi, Jayashree. I just joined. I was just busy in some other stuff. Yeah, so maybe I'll go, through the recording later on this. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you, Sujit.
Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. In fact, we did take a question up from you early on. So yes, that's the other one. Perhaps you would like to preview.
3 questions already.
Yeah. No, thank you. Appreciate you asking those questions. But yeah,
we could look at Newton's question.
Yes, please. So I was going to read that. So Newton Fernandez is asking around how is it possible, or is it possible to make normalization, standardization, and data governance directly into HiveMQ, or do we need a separate DataOps system which has to work together with HiveMQ Broker?
So to maybe start off an answer, HiveMQ is a broker that implements the MQTT specification. It is not primarily thought of as a tool for data governance. The extension SDK that Anja just mentioned in regards to the Sparkplug work or the Sparkplug extension, of course, enables us to, it's just like a Lego block that you can plug into the HiveMQ broker. And that Lego block can contain all kinds of code that does stuff. Now, the easiest way to think about that is there's callbacks. So if there's a publish message, then there's a callback. And if you, in the extension SDK, implement the callback, then you have direct access to that publish message of the client. So it's quite possible to think about implementing you say normalization, standardization. So you could unpack the payload, you could transcribe it into another format. You could probably also look at data governance, but what you should keep in mind here is that the primary task of the HiveMQ broker is to power the communication of clients, with backends, with the SCADA systems, or whatever else is connected to the broker. The primary purpose is not to do data governance. So a lot of times you would want to actually put that somewhere else. And it depends on your architecture requirements where that somewhere else would be.
Sounds good. Thank you, Matthias. Newton, if you would like, we can unmute you, and we want to make sure your question was answered. And if you have a follow-up, we want to give you a chance to ask that question.
Newton, I have unmuted you. You can actually start interacting.
Well, thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate your help. It helped me a lot. I have some thoughts about how it would work, but now it is completely clear. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Sounds good. Thank you, Norton. So the next question I would like to pick up is, bear with me 1 second here. Is the MQTT Sparkplug B compliant? So Sujit, this is a question which came from you also. There are still very few MQTT Sparkplug B compliant sensors or gateways available in the market. Is there any way to do payload conversion before sending it to the MQTT broker?
Yeah, so yeah, thanks for the question. I will pick this up, and so the point is here, if your sensor gateway are speaking MQTT, then it is possible. And now again, our Swiss knife, the extension system, will come in here.
Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, okay, so Swiss Army knife, okay, yeah, that's because so what you can do is so if this is an MQTT message, then HiveMQ, or I think also other brokers that have a kind of extensibility can get this message or consume the broker at first, and then you can on the inbound channel you can convert the payload into a Sparkplug payload, for example. And it would be really nice if this is a parsable format, and if this is well structured like JSON or XML or whatever. So, but that it is possible to pass this against the schema. And what would also be nice, but I guess this is not the case if this is MQTT5, because then you can put also some more meta information into the publish, or maybe at the beginning into the MQTT connect message to know that maybe this is a very specific payload that has to be passed into the Sparkplug payload. So that's how I would solve this problem.
Sounds good. Thank you, Anja. And let's give Sujit another chance if he has a follow-up to ask here. Sujit, you still have the right to unmute yourself if you want to ask a follow-up.
Yeah, thank you, Gaurav. So I have a follow-up question on this. Is like, Yeah, this is a way definitely we can do the Sparkplug B conversion. But let's assume like we have 10 different type of sensors of different make, which are sending payload in various format. So does it mean that we'll have to do the conversion almost 10 times at the MQTT extensions?
That depends a little bit how intelligent or efficient this can be made. So if this, I think if the content is so if you have a schema that allows to not repeat always this conversion, so and if the content is always in each time another content, then for sure you have to change this. But so good approach is that you have a schema that can be kind of compiled, and so that it's very fast. Then in the so after the first compilation and in the next runs to do this. So yes, but if you have another information inside, we have to reread the publish.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Great, thank you. So the next one we want to pick is around failure and resilience, and this question is around handling communication failure of a particular sensor in MQTT. Application listeners. Oh, sorry. Let me just reread this. So, how to handle communication failure of a particular sensor in MQTT when the application is listening to the MQTT broker and keeps on reporting the last collected value by MQTT broker. The gateway may have multiple sensors or multiple topics out of which one might have failed. How to report only the particular sensor failure over MQTT? So I think it's a bit of a best practice question also, in addition to just the feature of the broker. What's our guidance on this?
So let me think about this for a second here. So essentially, if you have a gateway that, let's say, has 10 sensors connected, and maybe that's OPC UA or that's Modbus or something else, then of course only the gateway is talking MQTT to the broker. So then the gateway has to pick up the task of noticing when one of his sensors is going offline. And that fact then has to be published essentially as an MQTT message. That could be done with standard MQTT features, with last will and testament messages. And it might also be, and Anja, you may help me here, something to do with a death message
Yeah, it depends. So in these questions, you don't mention the Sparkplug B, but for so in general, you need a kind of predefined structure to know how to handle these multiple sensors, and yeah, so you can define your own if you like, or you can use something that is developed exactly for this, and that's this Sparkplug B. But and the idea is here that the gateway is always sending any information about the sensors in the name of the sensors, and each sensor has an own topic, so its own topic, and the birth or the alive sign of the sensor will be sent as a publish message from the edge gateway, and also this going offline, for example. So that's yeah, independent from using Sparkplug B or something else, you need a really fixed topic structure and a fixed type how you will deal with these sensors, and how you and the kind of status so how you will process the status of the sensors. And in Sparkplug B, there they defined an answer for this.
So Sujit, is it for you, is this like a Sparkplug question, or is it more general?
No, I'm already aware like Sparkplug B has, birth, and so it shows birth certificate and death, and yeah, it could be handled over there. My question was like specific to non-Sparkplug B compliant system, and I was thinking like I don't know, like we could have something like value, time, quality. Okay, so because generally in OPC we find the quality also. So if quality goes bad, okay, that sensor
is. But this is maybe in Sparkplug B you have these stale and this is what you use for this, but and that's I think with the birth or the life of the sensor, then you can keep this back and work with the next values. But I think so. You must not invent the wheel again. So I think there are a lot of deep thoughts in this protocol or in the specification that are really from the OT and from the world, so where the people know these problems and how this could be handled. So,
but if you do want to implement it, then again, so last will and testament might be an option as a feature to use, or I mean simply the gateway knowing the exact status of the sensor. Publishing that status on change, and then you have a system that monitors that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. The next question I want to pick up is around it's the person who's asking is saying it's not a feature implementation question. It's a broader question, which is totally fine. They're saying that they are split between when to use MQTT and when to use OPC UA, and they are covering here an example to say, for example, they are figuring out how to use MQTT in industrial networks for IIoT Fieldbus devices like Profinet, Modbus, etc. How can it be used, and how does it interact with OPC UA? And they're saying that they find MQTT lightweight, but there's always this tension between as to where to use MQTT and when to use OPC UA. And if I may just connect one more question with this, they're also just extending the question to say, is it really possible to use MQTT for anything beyond telemetry and actually passing instructions down to PLC or sending any control signals to Fieldbus devices? So this question is from Kiran. So please, let's first answer the question, and then we'll see if we can find Kiran on the attendee list.
Yeah. Okay. So shall I start?
Yes, please go ahead, Anja.
Okay. Yeah. So the question is very general, because it depends completely. It depends what is the best for the plant floor. What is about the interoperable interfaces. What about the battery powered by for your devices? So do you have a SCADA system? Is it distributed? What protocols are you using right now? And so there are really a lot of questions that has to be clarified before. So what I can say in general, so if you have an OPC UA system running, so then it is maybe not the best idea to switch from today to tomorrow to another system, and but with each component that you put into an existing OPC UA system, so you have you increase the request response relations, and you have always to configure. And so this is one of the really big differences that you have with using an MQTT broker. You have a central system, and if you put one more system into, or one more device, or one more gateway, so that's nothing what you have to configure. So that's because the communication is completely different. It's not the poll response style. It's the pub sub style, and that means that it's really so the consumer of the messages must not know each other, and therefore it you can today subscribe new services to specific topics and remove this the day later, or you can add new gateways to the topics, and the subscribers can consume this from this beginning on. And and when you, but on the other side, you have we have a strong structure. You have plans, locations, production system, and devices, and so on. And where do you need to put all together? Where you need a strong structure on top of this, and then so here it makes sense if you, for example, if you put an additional MQTT sensor on a, or you put a further interface on a gateway and start step by step, and put then Sparkplug B on top of this, and switch over, and maybe so for all the new services that are needed, so that you really jump from one service that you will solve to the next, and put all these inside, and so on the other side, so what also is very interesting is the cost that you for transferring the data, and this is something that is really, there's really a huge difference, because with OPC you send a lot of data during the connection. For HTTP, for example, if you have something like this or if you are using your OPC with HTTP request response, you have always to establish again with the request response philosophy the connection. So it's really, or with Modbus, it's also that you have a lot of more traffic and a lot of more costs at the end, and so that's maybe one of the things that you should also overthink. That I think it's something like it's 50. I think it's something like 55% to more that you it's so if you have a 100%, then 55% it's for Modbus and 25 it's for MQTT. So in the relation of traffic, and that's really a lot. And so there are some really nice presentations about benchmarking specific use cases from the OT world with MQTT, with HTTP, Modbus, OPC, and so on. And these, when you look at these examples and to these benchmarks, that's really very, very interesting, and should be helpful to do these steps. And maybe one thing I forgot. So for Sparkplug, and so MQTT, by the way, so by the nature is really lightweight, and Sparkplug is much more lightweight because it can be used with compressed data, and you only use the feature, so the data only that will be changed will be transported, and that makes really big difference. You must not send always all the data. You only send the change. So that's the feature is this report by exception, and that makes also a huge difference.
I just wanted to add here that for us, of course, the bright shining future is MQTT. The past, whatever you want to describe it as, is OPC. It's kind of based on object linking and embedding. I remember that from working on Windows in the 90s. It's not the most modern way of doing things. And in the end, though, it comes down to what is the reality at the factory. If there is OPC UA, then so be it. Then probably you would want to integrate it into the new modern structure. And as machines are replaced and you get devices that speak MQTT, slowly you're going to move over to a more and more MQTT-based approach. So basically, that's your usual brownfield. Having a new factory that's being built on OPC UA, I would find that very strange, but maybe it still happens.
Yeah.
And then the second part of the, sorry, Anja, go ahead.
Yeah, I only want to mention that we have a white paper about exactly OPC UA and Sparkplug in combination, so that it's maybe helpful.
The second part of the question was about that telemetry stuff. What was it again? So essentially, I remember the question. The follow-up question was, do we recommend pushing commands down to a Modbus device or a PLC? So let me just answer that in a general term. MQTT is bidirectional. So that means, yes, you can push commands down to the gateway that's connected via MQTT, and the gateway can then forward these commands to Modbus connected devices, OPC UA connected devices. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think that that's generally an approach that can be taken.
Sounds good. Thank you, Anja. Thank you, Matthias, for that. Now let's from the past as an OPC UA move to the future, which is kind of Sparkplug, so more modern setups. And there's a couple of questions we have around that, which is it possible to run a Spark setup and other use cases on the same broker cluster? So is it generally true? Is it true for HiveMQ? Who wants to take that?
Yeah, I can answer this. So that's that's the question, if the broker can decide or differentiate between this. So with HiveMQ, you can do this by writing your own extension, and because it's easy to identify a Sparkplug message, because there's a very specific topic structure, and you must not look into the payload. It's enough if the topic starts with the Sparkplug specification root topic level. And I think this is also possible for other broker, that you can extend this via plugins. And with this, then you can for sure run different use cases apart from Sparkplug B use cases on the same broker.
Sounds good, Anja. And related to that, what does the future look like with respect to Sparkplug? Any opinion on that?
Yeah, I think the future it looks good, because I see this more from the developer side, and I know that the working group that is around Sparkplug is very busy and very active, and they are developing always and go forward. So they are working on new specification, so that making the things clearer, and also some more implementations for different languages and different sensors or gateways. So that's so from my point of view, it looks really good. And from the statistics say also that Sparkplug is more and more coming, and is more So when you look in the web trends, then you see that the graphs are going down here, up, not down. So the numbers are going up.
Sounds good. Just going back to one of the Azure questions, which is around integration with services on Azure. So how can HiveMQ help with integration with other services on Azure?
Sure. Let me talk about that for a second. I mean, we just had a webinar, I think like 5 weeks ago, talking about that. And my opinion about that is there is Azure Event Hubs available as a service. And Event Hubs is a queue-like system comparable to Apache Kafka. And I always like to recommend queue-like systems like Kafka to decouple services, application services from the actual communication, the MQTT communication that's happening via a HiveMQ broker, for example. And the decoupling has several benefits. The one benefit, of course, is that messages are pushed once and then can be consumed multiple times by multiple consumers. And that would be my suggestion for integrating into Azure services. So you have a HiveMQ broker, and just to make clear, this is important for me. HiveMQ is great, of course. I'm working at HiveMQ, but more importantly, it's a 100% MQTT compliant broker. And for things like Sparkplug, you need 100% compliance. There's a lot of brokers out there that are not compliant, and sometimes that's kind of a little bit hidden. Like, for example, when it comes to support for retained messages, which it kind of says it is, but then really, if you read between the lines, it's not. So make sure that whatever you implement, whatever broker you use, make sure it actually fulfills all the requirements that your use cases have. Use HiveMQ and it will, fine. But and then push messages to the Azure Event Hubs service. And from there, you can integrate it into the Azure Data Lake. You can use Azure Analytics to access the data and bring it to dashboards or put it into time series databases and the likes. So that is always a good approach. And maybe, Gaurav, if you don't mind picking up that first question there in the chat from Christopher, because it's kind of related. It's like, so in general, how do you integrate the HiveMQ broker with other systems? Now, first of all, if you have a connection, an MQTT connection to an ERP system, to an RDBMS, well, okay, an RDBMS wouldn't have an MQTT connection. That's kind of silly. But an ERP system might have an MQTT interface. And of course, you can then send via that interface messages to the broker. That is a normal published message that can be picked up by subscribers that listen to that subject. So yes, that's definitely possible. And so an RDBMS, of course, that would be wrapped with an application. Let's say there's a microservice that accesses data from the RDBMS, and then that microservice has an MQTT client. What is also possible is using the queue. So if you think about Apache Kafka, you can not only send messages from HiveMQ into Kafka and then process the messages on the other end with consumers, but you can also have a microservice that publishes a message to Kafka. HiveMQ listens to the Kafka topic, picks up that message, and delivers it to MQTT clients. So there's several ways of how to solve that architecturally, all of which are good to go.
Yeah, I can add here. So for the databases, for example, so we do this. For example, you can host the permissions for the topics, and for the MQTT clients can be hosted in a relational database, and this is what we have very often. It's very often the case when customers are using our enterprise security extension, and there you can add or use for your security. You can use, for example, your LDAP or your Active Directory or any database or whatever, and host there the information, and then this information can be made for sure available in the HiveMQ platform. And you can also write an extension where you get request some data from a database or something like this, to enrich your message or whatever your use case is. So that's completely up to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Anja. So Christopher, if you have a follow-up, please, we can unmute you and you can ask your question. Christopher, you have the permission to unmute yourself and ask your question if you like.
Oh, you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, we can.
Yeah. I think thank you so much for the response. I think it's interesting. I would just want to know more on the SDK side, on the extension side, how possible it can. Is it language specific to HiveMQ, or what type of in terms of
quality? The audio quality is not good enough.
I only understand something about language. Maybe you're asking for the programming language. That's Java.
For writing the SDK extension, as you said.
I don't understand.
I don't. Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
Repeat your question, Christopher.
Yeah, and type it into the chat, into the question answer.
I will do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christopher. So let's, in the meantime, move to Richard Benami's question. Richard is asking what tools are available for searching and querying MQTT Workspace. Who wants to take this?
I would like to know what do you understand for workspace? So I'm not sure with this word.
So Richard is still online, right? Yes. So Jeshri, do you mind unmuting or giving Richard the rights to unmute himself, and then perhaps we can get some clarity. Richard?
Richard, you have the permissions to unmute yourself.
Okay. Yeah. You want to start?
No, you start.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you mean the topic trees, for example, and yeah, that's a good question, and that's really yeah, not so easy. So because maybe you notice that the topic tree is very dynamic and it depends totally from the publisher and from the subscriber, and can be huge. So we have deployments with topic tree that contains a million of topics, and this is something that cannot be visualized or easy queried. So there are that's a good thing. So there are ideas so we have some work or more some research about doing a kind of snapshot how a topic tree looks like at the moment, and put this into a kind of a database, or for example a GraphQL database that could or language could be used to query this, and this is something that can be done with an extension. So that's but that's really not easy. And we have, so there are smaller for example MQTT FX is a kind of application that you can use for querying also the payload and some specific topics, but not so if you do this with the whole topic tree, then you will go out of memory with these tools. So that's always the key.
In general, a MQTT broker is a piece of communication software that enables communication between clients. So it does not keep data in the long term. So in that sense, it's also not really queryable. So you have to connect to it as a subscriber and transfer the data into a system that allows you to query it.
Okay, let's see if Richard has a follow-up. Richard, I can hear some birds behind you. But if you have a follow-up.
Okay, well, I'm thinking just like real time, like influx, I guess, or is that what you recommend?
Yeah, it's always a kind of snapshot when you would like to see, and the problem is really to how is it how can this be intelligent, visualized, and what do you want to do with this data? So that's so.
But in general, if you have an influx DB, yes, it's absolutely possible to connect an influx DB and send the data into InfluxDB is not a problem at all. And then in Influx, I mean, if you set it up as a historical data repository, then yes, you could.
And how about just like publishing it? So like if users want to know where, they want to know where to go to get the information they want.
Yeah, but this is something, so that goes into the question of the permission management, I would say. And for this, yeah, we have for sure extension and tools that, so normally if you set up a HiveMQ infrastructure, you need something, to manage a structure that clearly defines what client is allowed to do what. And these permission structure is something that should be managed and yeah. So we do this with in the most cases with the enterprise security extension, but so there are also some open source solutions. But finally, that's something that has to be described clearly, so that that normally it's clear that a user knows where he can publish and to what topics he can subscribe, because all others will be not allowed.
Yeah. Okay. Just the tools. Do you have an example besides your enterprise? What other tools there are, or what you just said?
Yeah, so that so just looking into the payload and into the topic tree, there are some. So just for developing and trying, there are tools like MQTT FX or the MQTT Explorer. That's outside from HiveMQ. These are open source tools where you can play with, and for the permission thing that I explained. So that, for example, for HiveMQ, you can start with the file role-based access control, where you define the permissions, with the file and with clear setup what your clients can do and what not.
Yeah. Okay, just one last thing, because you said it's basically the communication piece. So you just build other systems around your communication to simplify or secure things that are published back to users.
Do you want a further explanation of it, or?
Okay, well, I mean, I just wanted to. Okay, that's kind of what I gleaned from it. That,
yes,
you're handling the communications, and then
so essentially
you handle all the data separate in your own specific use case.
Right. So if you want to persist the data, you choose the system that serves your purpose, whether it's a time series database, a thing like a Kafka queue, an RDBMS, or whatever your use case requires. And then you have to get the MQTT messages into that system. And then you can use either an extension that achieves that, or you forward it into the Kafka queue and transform it then through like a streaming pipeline. So for example, take an Apache Flink or Spark that then transforms the data to your purposes into that time series database. That would be another approach, but there's many other approaches.
Yeah, right, I got it. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you for your question, Richard. I see one question in the chat, so we'll take that. But just one quick request to all participants: we have a quick survey question coming for you right after this. Right after we tackle this question from Christopher. So stay with us for that survey question. So the question we're going to answer now is the skill set required for developers to be able to create extensions for custom data for existing enterprise systems. Yeah,
that's easy to answer. You should be able to implement or to program Java, and we have a really well documented SDK that where you find the documentation on our homepage, and the SDK. So there's one SDK that is available for the public HiveMQ for the community edition, and this is really very featureful. You can really do a lot of things. You can jump into more or less all messages and manipulate or change or create and so on. And if this is not enough, then you can come back to us and we can discuss the enterprise features.
And really important, we have a really well-stocked GitHub repository for HiveMQ. Pick out like a Hello World extension project there, clone it, and start playing around.
Sounds good. Thank you. Jayashree, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Gaurav. Thanks, Anja. Thanks, Matthias. So I'll be running the second poll. Request you all to participate. We'll run it about a minute. And if you need any resources, it's right there on our website. We'll be sharing all those links in our follow-up email as well. You can also reach out to our community forum. Before we close, we are just 3 minutes at the top of the hour. So
nothing to add. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for the questions, guys.
All right. Okay, then Gaurav.
No, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to everybody who participated. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining in, and we'll see you all next time. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. We'll help you out. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.